All right. Well, we're here. We're at the end. 11 years, 21 movies. We're finally here at the end for Avengers Endgame. This is it. Everything has been building up to this point. After Infinity War left us hanging from last year, everyone's got to know what happens next. What happens next to our heroes? How many more are gonna die? How many more are gonna live? All these questions we want answered. Well, not gonna give you all the answers today. Obviously, I don't want to spoil this for anyone out there, but we'll try to cover the film as best as we can because there's quite a bit to talk about without actually talking about the specifics of what's going on here. Okay, so Avengers Endgame. Picks up from where we last left off with Infinity War. When Thanos, as you might recall, he had the big old finger snap, and half of the universe just disappeared, just turned into ash, just out of nowhere. And now that we pick up with Endgame picks up right where we left off, where everyone's just kind of like licking their wounds and just picking up the pieces, or picking up the ash, rather, if you will. Of what once was, because now they've been defeated. And the thing I love most about this film is that it takes its time. It realizes that this is the end of the line. Like, this is it. This is like an end of an era. Like make no mistake, they've been building up to this. Everything has contributed to this one film that's going to end everything. So the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo, directing once again after directing Infinity War and Civil War and The Winter Soldier. They've done an amazing job. I gotta mention this. They've done an amazing job just with these Marvel ensemble pictures, like just building it up over and over and over. Oh, thank you so much for those. So what's interesting, I love how they keep building more and more into these films, and they don't really feel jumbled. They feel like there's a good balance here. There's a good juggle, and we get to explore enough of the characters here. The easiest way to compare this film would be to Kill Bill, because like with Kill Bill Volume 1, nonstop action. Just it set up the story, but it's mostly just bang bang bang, and that's how Infinity War felt. Infinity War felt like a series of meetups and beat-ups, pretty much. It's like, oh, here's all these heroes that you never thought would be together, and then they get together, and they kind of work together to fight Thanos, and it was mostly about Thanos more than anything. Now, thankfully, the heroes do actually get to inhabit this film, and we get to explore a little bit more of them, mostly because the film is 3 hours, and it uses those 3 hours well, because it pumps the brakes, realize whoa, look, this is probably going to be the last film. So why don't we take a moment? Why don't we breathe? Why don't we get to explore more of these characters and get to know them a little bit more before this whole epic journey comes to an end here? And I like that because we've been building on these characters for so long that it feels like they have to come to come to some end with like their personal faults and their own insecurities that have been brewing up over the course of all these films. Now, the most notable one, obviously, is Tony Stark, Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr. And through the course of these films, we've seen him kind of try to come to grips with security. He's tried to realize that that he can't be the be all end all to save everyone. He's had these fears, in the Iron Man trilogy, he was kind of like battling with himself, realizing that he can't shove everyone away. That eventually by Iron Man 3 he realizes that. But at the events of Avengers, and even more so with Age of Ultron, he realizes that that this paranoia of his isn't gone. Like, he realizes that he's got to work with others, but that he that he's still not comfortable working with others, that he's still fearful of defending the world, feeling like he can't do it, that this isn't going to work. And sure enough, he wastes no time when in Endgame, just goes straight out of the gate, says I told you, I had premonitions, and no one believed me. And it's mostly just him coming to terms with himself. On the other side of the aisle, we've had Captain America, Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans. And he is still, I love how with with Captain America, his flaws are kind of more internal. They're flaws that he doesn't want to recognize. Like he keeps, like he has a great presence, like he's had in the previous Avengers films, where he always feels like he's the leader here. Like he makes the most inspirational speeches. Like he, is willing to put the most on the line. But he still has these internal flaws, and we've seen some of that in Age of Ultron, when he was having these dreams about how he can't live in a world without war and without Peggy. Like he still hasn't let Peggy go because how could you let that go? How could you? So he's still battling these thoughts that that he thinks are not hurting him, but they are, and I love how they kind of like slowly come brewing up in this film. So those are like the main two characters that are built up upon here. The other characters do get a lot of great development here too. We get to see Hawkeye again, and Hawkeye makes pretty interesting turn here. Actually, pretty much every character has an interesting turn with how they react to the Thanos snap. Especially with Hawkeye and Hulk, with Black Widow. And Thor, we have all these characters who they react differently. Some of them try to better themselves, to try to learn from this experience. Others try to carry on, try to, make sure that, justice is still served. And others just kind of just crumble, just turn into messes. Like they're unable to deal with it and unable to come to grips with a part of themselves while they're trying to figure out what to do about Thanos. Let's see. Let's end some of the chats and then we'll get right back because we're gonna delve deep in this here. So let's see. Does Hawkeye have that dumb haircut the whole movie? Well, he like I said, a lot of characters go through changes in this film, and sometimes there's not a lot of this is a huge film. Like there's a cast of over like maybe 20, 30 characters here. And most of them don't have a lot of time to make the biggest changes, so most of them just kind of get cosmetic changes. Like, Hawkeye gets a different haircut. Captain Marvel gets a new haircut. Some characters get new costumes, new outfits. Some of them come out of nowhere, and you're just kind of like, well, okay, new costume, sure, why not? And so, like, you've got a lot to balance here. But I think that this is, again, a great testament to the Russo brothers, is they know how to juggle these characters and make them... and make them feel like they've gone through a transformation here. Because there's a lot of time left to... there's a lot of time here and openness where you get to, embrace these characters and sort of feel their sense of loss and their desire to change and sort of coming to terms with themselves as we come to the end of Phase 3. And ultimately... I hope this isn't too much, but ultimately kind of like the end of an era here. This kind of really does feel like the end of not just of Phase 3, but like the entire MCU. Now, yes, we do have more MCU films on the way. Of course we do. We've got Spider-Man Far From Home coming up, and we've got a whole bunch of other Marvel films planned. But still, this film really tries to embrace the fact that, like, look, this is going to be the end for this huge story we've been building up over the course of 11 years. And it is, and it is going to end here. There's no backseas, no saving this for the next film. No, no, like, leave that on the shelf. No, like, I'm trying not to spoil this here, but this is, everything is going to come to a head in this film, ultimately, an endgame, if you will. Yeah, just like it says in the chat there. One of the interesting things that I really like about this film is that it does a great job weaving in pretty much every element of the MCU at this point. Like, no joke. Like, for every one of you out there who has been, like rewatching all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this film, you've been going back through, from Iron Man all the way up to Captain Marvel. You've been studying every film. You've been paying attention to every character and plot point and trying to mark every little plot twist and what you think will happen in the film. Every one of you who have done that, you will not be disappointed. This film makes great use of, like, the entire MCU, to the point where I almost kind of want to refer to it as kind of like it's like an episode of, like, the Venture Brothers, in, like, the later season of the Venture Brothers, where it's pretty much, look, you've had time, it's been 11 years, it's been all these films, they've all been, like, kind of huge blockbuster hits. It's not going to slow down for you. It's going to throw a lot of history at the MCU at you in this film. and it's really going to and it's going to hit you hard. It's going to hit you pretty hard here. I'm not joking. Like there's a few points where I was kind of starting to tear up, realizing like how much is going to happen in this film. There's without giving too much away, it's like I like how the plot is a little bit more clever than just like how Infinity War was with go to point A, beat up bad guy B, and grab MacGuffin C. It's not quite that simple. It's pretty clever. Makes great use of all the characters here. There's a lot of fun twists to it. I love how like I said, a lot of time spent to develop these characters, and they build them up really well here. That you really do feel something by the time we get to the final battle. Because like I said, they've it's 3 hours, and they spend a lot of time where we get to just slow down and get to know these characters and have their arcs come to a head. But if you think, like, for some people thinking when I compare it to like Kill Bill Volume 2, you're thinking, oh well, like, is it just going to be like talky the whole time? Is it not really going to have any big battles? Don't worry. If you're coming in expecting a big grand showdown, don't worry. You're not going to be let down. There's a battle here that's way bigger than Infinity War, and I'm pretty sure just about everyone's going to be pleased with that battle there. The cast, the cast is huge. I mean, like I said, like with the Russo brothers, they always find a way to like build up with every film. They stack the ensemble cast higher and higher and higher, and this is no joke. This is like the biggest collective that they have of the MCU here. It feels like, I haven't quite checked, but I'm pretty sure it's just about the entire MCU. Like even the small little characters that you might have forgotten. Like I've mentioned this in like Infinity War and like a few other Avengers films that like, oh yeah, some characters you haven't seen in a while. Yeah, they're coming back. A lot of characters come back here. So characters you think you wouldn't see again. They come back here in one form or another. Let's see. Let's do some in the chat here. Jams Ham says, glad it rewards you for 11 years of watching. Not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing at all. Like, it looks so effortless when you watch it. Just because it feels like there's such a natural flow here. And I think that's mostly because we've spent the time building up these characters that we're able to have these conversations where, they can all just be in a room. And they could be talking about the Infinity Stones. They could be talking just about sandwiches, and it could be really, really intriguing. There's a really great scene in a diner that's like, it could have just been like a simple expositional scene, like saying like, hey, we're getting the band back together to stop Thanos. Want to like let's join up again. But they actually take the time to actually have a little bit of fun with scenes. And I love that so much because, like, this does really feel like, especially when you get to that fourth act, it does have that epic fantasy feel where, it's kind of like Return of the King type vibes where it is big action, where you are going to see, like, all these characters come to a head and come together for this grand battle that you've been hoping for. It delivers on all those points, but still feels like an emotional end here. It really embraces a lot of the characters. Like I said though, we do get a lot of like interesting developments from a lot of characters here. We do develop like Nebula a little bit more. We get a lot more development from a lot from like Thor. I like, one of the aspects I like about Thor is it always felt like, because Thor had been through so much, like, it didn't really feel like, it felt like the emotion just kind of like washed over him. Like, seriously, in the events of Infinity War, after everything that has happened to him, you're just, like, he just kind of shrugs it off. Just like, well, that's pathos, that's part of the whole deal here. But I like the fact that it's all kind of like hitting him at once in this film. So you do get to see a side of Thor that you haven't seen before. And frankly, one that I wish I would have seen come through a little bit more clearer in the other films. So that's interesting. I mean, the whole cast here it feels like there's enough for the entire cast to do here, especially mostly because the cast has been whittled down to more than half, I believe. So there is time to kind of focus on just a few and build them up and bring more to their characters here, because like, if you don't, honestly, if this were like the last MCU film, it would have been it'd be fine. It'd be perfect because you feel like you understand and get to know a lot of the characters, and that a lot of their arcs feel mostly resolved by the end of this. Don't get me wrong, there's still potential here where they could, branch off and do more Marvel films. They set that up clearly well here. Obviously, they're going to set that up clearly well. But it always feels it always feels like it's engaging, like they're not really holding anything back here. Like most Marvel films, it kind of feels like, we're going to put this on the shelf, save it for later. We might get to it. We might do a trilogy closer, and we'll kind of build up to it through there. Not with Endgame. Endgame is just like, look, all or nothing now. All or nothing. Everything's on the line. All right. Let's read one more chat here. Let's see. What character would you say gets the most screen time? If I remember right, it was Gamora in Infinity War. The character probably gets the most screen time. You could find like the scientific way of like recording how long they're on screen. I would probably say it's kind of a toss-up. I think it might be a tie between Iron Man and Captain America, because let's face it, they have kind of been like the heart and soul of like the MCU with like the most conflicting nature. Captain America's like, questioning of the world that he's trying to understand, and Iron Man feeling insecure in this world. There was a lot of great duality with that, and a lot of clashing in Civil War, because it feels like that was it almost kind of feels like, if you're looking at the Marvel Universe as a whole, like the Avengers is kind of like Star Wars: The New Hope. And then you have Captain America Civil War. That's like Empire Strikes Back, where you have all the characters just beaten down and feuding with each other, like they're in shambles. And then Endgame kind of feels like Return of the Jedi. Thankfully without Ewoks. Thankfully without like little Ewoks or Porgs, so you don't have to worry about that aspect. Yeah, it really does. The visual effects are great. Obviously, you still got that great motion capture performance from Thanos, and then you've got the motion capture performances of Rocket Raccoon. There's a few other motion capture performances to mention in here. There's some new suits that come into play. There's some, like I said, some new outfits. There's a crazy method they use for trying to undo the damage that Thanos has done. And still, and it takes risks. It takes a lot of risks that you might not expect. There's a few surprises here along the way, especially surprises that pop up like really early in the film too. So it really kind of like throws a wrench early into the film, and then you're kind of like wondering, whoa, where the hell is this gonna go next? Because if you think it, like, I love that. I love how, like, in, like, the first, like, few minutes, it kind of, like, throws everything off track from what you think is going to happen. And then something different happens. So, yeah, I was kind of winded, much like Infinity War. I was kind of, first off, I was exhausted. It's 3 hours, so many characters, so much that hits you emotionally in the film, so many huge visual effects and big battle action sequences that it really did overwhelm me. So I had to take a minute. I had to compress and try to take this all in for a minute. And I think when I took it in, I actually went back and watched Infinity War after I saw Endgame with different eyes, and it made me appreciate just how much is built up here. I guess like one of the other things I noticed too is like, and you'll notice if you're I guess one of the other things you might notice while you watch this film is that it's with like it kind of like parallels with Infinity War. You're gonna see scenes that are kind of similar to what happened in Infinity War, and then from like a new perspective in Endgame, where it kind of makes you see them differently. It's kind of like the big rebuttal, because like the whole deal is like, yeah, like within Infinity War, Thanos wins, and like he kind of like makes this big argument, and like a lot of people might look at that and say like, it's gonna be like that dumb argument. It's like, oh, you're like, adolescence is adolescence is idolizing the Avengers, and like adulthood is embracing Thanos because Thanos was right. Except for, real adulthood is realizing that Thanos was wrong because utilitarian methods ultimately, damage the soul. And here it's kind of interesting because there's a little bit of like a parallel where there's almost kind of like a power shift to like the events of what happened in Infinity War. So you're kind of like seeing almost kind of like the other side of the coin as almost kind of like a different argument for utilitarianism as it comes about in the film. In addition to, and I think it works well when you consider what the characters are building up to in this film. That it really that it feels like it feels like such an immense like epic. Like it brings it brings pretty much everything I wanted into this film. And like, you know, at first I thought, well, like, okay, you know, maybe I would have liked to explore a little bit more of the characters, but when I think about how many characters are balancing here, everything that they're talking about here, everything that comes into play, everything that feels resolved and is understood and changes with these characters over the course of these 3 hours, I was blown away by this film. I think I definitely think by far. And I kind of had a low bar for like the rest of the Avengers film. But I do really think, yes, Endgame is by far the best Avengers film. I was kind of debating it, but then I quickly realized, yes, considering everything that these characters have gone through, considering everything that has built up to this point, Endgame just it delivered everything I wanted. And it delivered everything that we needed too out of a final Marvel film. Like I've seen other people like have been describing it as kind of like it didn't really feel like a Marvel film. It felt like a Christopher Nolan film. The way, you know, the way it delved deep into these characters and their insecurities and these huge theories about, you know, about like security and history and nostalgia and coming to terms with yourself and trying to realize, you know, like trying to battle within yourself for like what is the greater good? What are we fighting for? What's the purpose here? And it's just I've never seen a superhero film like this before. Like there's really like, I mean, the easiest thing I could say is, you know, comparatively to its structure is, yeah, kind of like with Kill Bill, but ultimately there's no comparison to this type of film. Like this is, the Russo brothers they've set their ambitions higher and higher with every film, and they constantly deliver. That Endgame is everything. They throw everything at the screen and they make pretty much all of it work. It really, it's a goddamn epic. I don't know how else to describe it better than that. So, yeah, I could babble on more and more, but I'll just summarize it by saying, yes, Avengers Endgame, 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's that good. It's that good.